Captain Jake Miller stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon, watching the stars through the main display. 3 months into their exploration mission, his crew had mapped 12 new systems and discovered 2 worlds that could support human colonies. It was good work, steady work, the kind that kept humanity expanding across the galaxy. The communication station beeped. Lieutenant Amy Chen looked up from her console, her face showing confusion. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission. It's coming from outside our mapped space." Jake walked over to her station. "Put it through." The main screen flickered, then showed the image of a tall, elegant being with pale blue skin and silver hair. She wore elaborate robes that seemed to shimmer in the light. Behind her stood several similar beings in military uniforms. "Primitive species of this sector," the alien began, her voice carrying the tone of someone used to being obeyed without question. "I am Princess Lyra Velter of the Zephyrian Empire. You have entered space claimed by our domain. You will surrender your vessel immediately and prepare to pay tribute to our glorious empire. Resistance will result in your destruction." The bridge fell silent. Jake could feel his crew watching him, waiting for his response. He had dealt with hostile aliens before, but this was different. This wasn't a territorial dispute or a misunderstanding. This was someone who clearly believed humans were just another weak species to be conquered. Jake stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back. "Princess Lyra, I'm Captain Jake Miller of the United Earthship Horizon. I appreciate you taking the time to contact us, but I'm afraid I'll have to decline your generous offer." The princess blinked, clearly not expecting that response. "You decline? Do you not understand your situation, human? Our fleet could destroy your single ship with ease." "I'm sure you have impressive ships," Jake replied calmly. "But before we continue this conversation, perhaps you'd like to come aboard for proper negotiations. I think we have a lot to discuss." Princess Lyra's advisors began whispering urgently behind her. Jake caught fragments of their conversation through the open channel. Words like intelligence reports and primitive species reached his ears. "Invite me to your ship," the princess asked, suspicion clear in her voice. "Why would you do this when facing superior force?" Jake smiled, the kind of smile that never quite reached his eyes. "Well, princess, in my experience, the best negotiations happen face to face. Besides, I think you might find our conversation more interesting than you expect." Chief Engineer Carlos Reyes spoke quietly from his station. "Captain, I'm reading 15 ships on long-range sensors. They're holding position about 2 light hours out." Jake nodded but didn't take his eyes off the screen. "Princess, it looks like you brought quite an escort. That's fine. But I should mention that we recently concluded successful negotiations with the Corvin Coalition, the Blaine Confederacy, and the Helix Alliance. All 3 were initially hostile, much like yourselves." The whispering behind Princess Lyra grew louder. Jake heard one advisor say something about 3 coalition defeats and intelligence failure.
"You claim to have defeated 3 separate
alliances?" Princess Lyra asked, her confident demeanor beginning to crack slightly. "Not defeated," Jake corrected. "Negotiated with. There's a difference. The Corvins tried to blockade our supply lines. The Blaine Confederacy sent raiders against our colonies. The Helix Alliance demanded we abandon 12 star systems." He paused, letting that sink in. "All 3 learned that humanity prefers cooperation to conflict, but we're quite good at conflict when it's forced upon us." Dr. Lisa Park looked up. From her science station, "Captain, I'm picking up some interesting energy signatures from their ships. The weapon systems appear to be plasma-based, similar to what the Helix Alliance used." Jake nodded. "Thank you, Doctor." He turned back to the screen. "Princess, your weapon technology appears quite advanced. I'd be interested in learning more about it during our meeting." Princess Lyra's eyes narrowed. "How do you know about our weapons? We haven't powered them up." "We have very good sensors," Jake said casually. "Lieutenant Chen, would you mind sharing some of our recent intelligence reports with the princess?" Amy Chen's fingers moved across her console. Within seconds, detailed schematics of Zephyrian ships appeared on both the Horizon screens and, judging by Princess Lyra's expression, on her ships as well. These are classified Zephyrian military designs, one of her advisors gasped. Double quotes, yes they are, Jake agreed. We've been monitoring your Empire's activities for several months now. Very impressive fleet movements, by the way. Your recent expansion into the Outer Rim territories was particularly well executed. Princess Lyra stared at the screen, her composure finally beginning to crack. This is impossible. Our ships are equipped with the most advanced stealth technology in the galaxy. Advanced is relative, Jake said. Your stealth works quite well against most species we've encountered. Unfortunately for your surprise visit, humanity has a habit of adapting quickly to new challenges. Commander Steve Torres stepped forward. Captain, shall I prepare the diplomatic bay for our guests? Excellent idea, Commander. Jake turned back to Princess Lyra. We have a fully equipped diplomatic suite where we can discuss this situation properly. Okay. I think you'll find our facilities quite comfortable. The princess looked at her advisors, then back at Jake. The confidence she had shown at the beginning of the conversation was gone, replaced by careful calculation. You speak as if you hold the superior position, Captain Miller. I don't think in terms of superior and inferior, Princess, Jake replied. I think in terms of mutual benefit. Right now, you have information we'd like to learn, and I suspect we have capabilities you weren't expecting to encounter. It seems like a good foundation for productive talks. Princess Lyra was quiet for several long moments. Finally, she nodded. Very well, Captain Miller. I will come aboard your ship, but I warn you, any treachery will result in immediate retaliation from my fleet. Understood completely, Jake said. I'll have our docking bay prepared for your shuttle. And Princess, welcome to human space. Princess Lyra stepped out of her shuttle into the docking bay of the UES Horizon, expecting to find crude metal walls and primitive technology. Instead, she found herself in a clean, well-lit space with smooth surfaces that seemed to glow with their own inner light. The walls displayed moving images of star charts and ship status reports that updated themselves in real time. Welcome aboard, Princess, Captain Jake Miller said, walking forward with two of his officers. I hope your journey from your flagship wasn't too uncomfortable. Your docking bay is not what I expected, Princess Lyra admitted, looking around. With barely hidden curiosity, try to keep things functional, Jake replied. This is Commander Steve Torres, my tactical officer, and Dr. Lisa Park, our chief science officer. Princess Lyra nodded to both humans, then gestured to her own companions. These are General Kex Vorin, my military advisor, and Chancellor Mirathes, my diplomatic counsel. As they walked through the corridors toward the diplomatic suite, Princess Lyra found herself studying everything around her. The walls were lined with what appeared to be artwork, but as she looked closer, she realized they were historical records. Images of humans on different worlds, building cities, fighting battles, exploring space. These pictures, she said, stopping, in front of one that showed humans working alongside several different alien species. How many worlds do your people control? Control is a strong word, Jake said. We have colonies on 47 worlds, trade agreements with 63 different species, and mutual defense pacts with 12 stellar nations. General Vorin spoke for the first time. 63 species, our intelligence report suggested. Humanity was a single-world civilization that had barely achieved faster-than-light travel. Intelligence can be tricky, Dr. Park said with a slight smile. It depends a lot on what sources you use and how recent your information is. They entered the diplomatic suite. A comfortable room with a large table surrounded by chairs designed to accommodate different body types. The walls here showed real-time views of space around the ship, giving the impression that they were sitting in a transparent bubble among the stars. Please, have a seat, Jake said, gesturing to the table. Can we offer you anything? Food? Drink? We have synthesizers that can create almost anything. That won't be necessary, Princess Lyra said, though she continued to look around the room with growing confusion. This was not the primitive vessel she had expected to board. Jake took his seat across from her. Before we begin, I thought you might be interested in seeing some of our recent activities in this sector. He nodded to Commander Torres, who activated a holographic display above the table. The display showed a three-dimensional map of local space, with dozens of star systems marked in different colors. Many showed small symbols that Princess Lyra recognized as trade routes, military positions, and colony markers. "This is impossible," Chancellor Thess whispered. "We've been monitoring this sector for 2 years. There was no sign of such extensive activity." "Amy Chen is very good at her job," Jake said.
What?
"She's our intelligence officer.
What?
She specializes in what we call quiet observation. We prefer to understand a situation completely before we make our presence known." Princess Lyra stared at the display. "You've been watching us?" "For about 4 months now," Jake confirmed. "Since your empire began moving ships toward the Kepler Nebula. We wanted to understand your intentions before you encountered any of our trade partners in that region." "Your trade partners?" General Vorin repeated. "The Corvin Coalition, you mean?" "Among others? Yes," Steve Torres said. "The Corvins were quite helpful in providing information about regional politics. They mentioned that the Zephyrian Empire had been making inquiries about human activities." Princess Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. "The Corvins told you about our intelligence gathering?" "They warned us, actually," Jake said. "Apparently, they've had some unpleasant encounters with your expansion fleets in the past. They suggested we might want to prepare for contact." Dr. Park leaned forward. "We found their warnings quite interesting, especially when combined with data from our other sources. The Blaine Confederacy had similar stories, as did several independent worlds along your border." "You spoke with the Blaine Confederacy?" Chancellor Thess asked, her voice rising slightly. "Extensively," Jake replied. "They were very interested in establishing diplomatic relations after we helped them resolve a dispute with some raiders. Turned out the raiders were using modified Zephyrian weapons technology." The holographic display shifted, showing detailed schematics of weapons, ships, and military installations. Princess Lyra recognized all of them as Zephyrian designs, including several that were supposed to be classified at the highest levels. "These are state secrets," General Vorin said, his hand moving instinctively toward his weapon. "We're state secrets," Steve Torres corrected. "Information has a way of spreading, especially when it concerns military technology being used to threaten peaceful worlds." Jake gestured to the display. "Princess, I want to be clear about something. We didn't gather this information to threaten your empire. We gathered it to understand what we might be dealing with if diplomatic contact became necessary. And now?" Princess Lyra asked quietly. "Now we're having that diplomatic contact," Jake said. "The question is, what kind of relationship do our peoples want to have?" Princess Lyra looked at the evidence spread before her. Every piece of intelligence her empire thought was secure, every plan they believed was secret, every advantage they thought they possessed, all of it was here, displayed casually on a human ship by a captain who spoke of cooperation instead of conquest. "How?" she asked finally. "How did you acquire all of this without us detecting you?" "Princess, humanity learned early in our development that survival often depends on understanding threats before they understand you. We've had a lot of practice at staying invisible while gathering information. Your stealth technology must be incredibly advanced," General Vorin said. "We don't use stealth technology," Dr. Park said. "We use something much simpler. We listen, we watch, we ask questions. Most species focus so much on their military superiority that they forget to pay attention to what's happening around them." "Princess?" Lyra sat back in her chair, trying to process what she was learning. Her empire had built its power on the assumption that they were more advanced than the species they encountered. But humanity seemed to operate on completely different principles. "What do you want from us?" she asked. "That depends," Jake said. "What did you want from us when you arrived here demanding surrender?" "We wanted to add your territory to our empire," Princess Lyra said honestly. "We believed you were a primitive species that could be easily controlled, and now—" Princess Lyra looked around the room, at the casual display of intelligence that should have been impossible to obtain, at the comfortable sophistication of a ship that belonged to a species she had thought was barely civilized. "I think we may have made a serious mistake." Princess Lyra had expected the tour of the human ship to reveal their weaknesses. Instead, every section, Chief Engineer Carlos Reyes, showed her raised new questions about what humanity was capable of. "This is our main engine room," Carlos said, leading the group through a door that opened with barely a whisper. We call it the heart of the ship. The space was larger than Princess Lyra had thought possible. The ceiling stretched up 3 levels, with walkways and platforms connecting different sections of machinery. But what caught her attention immediately was that she recognized some of the technology. That power coupling, she said, pointing to a device near the main reactor. That's Corvin design. Good eye, Carlos said with approval. We adapted their energy distribution system after they showed us how efficient it was. Improved the output by about 30%. General Vorin stepped closer to examine another section. These plasma conduits are definitely Blaine Confederacy technology. Right again, Carlos said. Their plasma containment methods are excellent. We just made them a bit more stable and added some safety improvements. Chancellor Thess walked around a large console covered in controls that seemed to shift and change as she watched. What about this? I don't recognize any of this technology. That's because it's from 6 different species, Carlos explained. We took the best ideas from each group and put them together. The Corvin power systems, Blaine plasma technology, Helix Alliance computer interfaces, some shield generators from a species called the Neth, navigation systems from the Prex Republic, and a few other bits and pieces. Princess Lyra stared at the integrated systems. Hey, you combine technology from 6 different species? That should be impossible. The power requirements alone would be incompatible. Should be yes, Carlos agreed. But humans have a habit of making impossible things work. We spent about 3 months figuring out how to make all these systems talk to each other properly.
Ow.
Months? General Vorin sounded shocked. Our best engineers would need years to integrate even to different technological systems. Maybe that's because you try to force them to work the way they were originally designed, Carlos suggested. We figured out what each system was really good at, then built new connections to let them work together. Dr. Lisa Park joined the group, carrying a datapad. Captain Miller asked me to show our guests the defensive systems. Princess, are those your ships maintaining position outside the asteroid field? Princess Lyra nodded. My escort fleet? 15. Heavy cruisers with full weapon loads. Impressive, Dr. Park said. Would you like to see how our defensive systems work? Before Princess Lyra could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Not emergency alarms, but the steady tone that indicated a planned drill or demonstration. What's happening? Chancellor Thess demanded. Demonstration, Carlos said calmly. Dr. Park likes to show off. The group moved to an observation deck where they could see space around the ship. Princess Lyra could see her 15 escort vessels in the distance. Their weapon systems powered, but not aimed at the human ship. Princess, Dr. Park said, could you contact your fleet commander and ask him to activate targeting systems? Nothing. Aggressive, just normal tactical positioning. Princess Lyra spoke into her communication device, giving the orders. Within moments, her ships moved into attack formation, their weapons trained on the UES horizon. Perfect, Dr. Park said. She turned to her control panel and pressed several buttons. Carlos, bring the shield harmonics online. Shield harmonics activated, Carlos confirmed. Princess Lyra watched in amazement as waves of energy swept out from the human ship toward her fleet. The energy wasn't visible to the naked eye, but her communication device immediately began receiving panicked reports from her ship commanders. Princess, our weapons are offline, came the voice of Admiral Zex, her fleet commander. Systems are down. We're trying to restart, but nothing is responding. How? General Vorin asked, staring at Dr. Park. We studied your shield frequencies from the communication signals your ships have been sending, Dr. Park explained. Every Zephyrian ship uses the same basic shield technology, which means they all have the same vulnerabilities. We developed a harmonic pulse that disrupts your targeting computers without damaging anything else. You disabled 15 military vessels without firing a shot, Princess Lyra said quietly. Temporarily disabled, Dr. Park corrected. Systems will come back online in about 10 minutes. We're not interested in destroying your ships, just demonstrating that we understand how they work. Carlos gestured toward another display showing the ship's internal systems. The same principle applies to everything we do. Instead of building bigger weapons or stronger shields, we figure out how things work and find better ways to use them. Your ship is smaller than our cruisers, Chancellor Thess observed. How can you power systems advanced enough to disable an entire fleet because we don't waste energy? Carlos said. Look at this. He pointed to a readout showing power distribution. Throughout the ship, most species build their ships with separate power sources for different systems. Weapons get one reactor, shields get another, engines get a third. Very inefficient. And you do it differently? Princess Lyra asked. We use one main reactor that powers everything, but we built a smart distribution system that sends power where it's needed most at any given moment, Carlos explained. Right now, most of our power is going to the harmonic pulse generator. In normal flight, most goes to engines. In combat, it can shift instantly to weapons or shields. Dr. Park checked her datapad. Admiral Zek should be getting his systems back online right about now. Princess Lyra's communication device crackled to life. Princess, our systems are coming back online. All weapons and targeting computers appear to be functioning normally. Thank you, Admiral, Princess Lyra said. Return to standard patrol formation. She looked at the two humans who had just demonstrated the ability to neutralize her entire escort fleet without breaking a sweat. How long did it take you to develop this harmonic pulse technology? About 2 weeks, Dr. Park said. Once we had good data on your shield frequencies, the rest was just engineering. 2 weeks, General Voron repeated. You developed entirely new weapons technology in 2 weeks. Not weapons, Carlos corrected. Tools, there's a difference. Weapons are designed to destroy things. Tools are designed to solve problems. Princess Lyra walked to the observation window and looked out at her ships, now back in normal formation. They looked the same as before, but she knew that everything had changed. In the span of a few minutes, she had watched a single human ship demonstrate the ability to neutralize her entire fleet using technology they had developed in 2 weeks. What other tools do you have? She asked quietly. Dr. Park and Carlos exchanged glances. Princess, Dr. Park said, maybe we should head back to the diplomatic suite. I think Captain Miller would like to continue our conversation. As they walked back through the corridors of the human ship, Princess Lyra found herself looking at everything with new eyes. The artwork on the walls wasn't just decoration, it was a record of human achievements across dozens of worlds. The smooth, efficient design wasn't just aesthetics. It was the result of practical engineering that prioritized function over appearance. Carlos, she said as they walked, when you integrate technology from different species, don't you run into compatibility problems? All the time, Carlos said with a grin. That's what makes it interesting. Every species builds things differently because they think differently. Humans just happen to be good at figuring out how to make different types of thinking work together. Is that why you were able to negotiate with the Corvin Coalition and the others? Princess Lyra asked. Probably part of it, Carlos said. When you understand how someone else's technology works, you usually end up understanding how they think. It makes it easier to find solutions that work for everyone. Princess Lyra realized that her mission had completely changed. She had come here expecting to demand surrender from a primitive species. Instead, she was learning that humanity might be the most dangerously capable species her empire had ever encountered. Princess Lyra sat in the guest quarters that Captain Miller had assigned to her, staring at the datapad in her hands. Her ships needed repairs after the harmonic pulse demonstration, which meant she would be staying on the human vessel for at least 3 days. Miller had offered her access to their historical database, saying it might help her understand humanity better. She had expected propaganda and boastful stories of conquest. What she found instead changed everything she thought. She knew about intelligent life. The first file she opened was labeled Earth History Overview. The planet that appeared on her screen looked nothing like the peaceful garden worlds her empire preferred to colonize. Massive continents covered in ice, vast deserts, violent storms that could destroy entire cities. But humans had not only survived on this harsh world, they had thrived. Fascinating reading. Commander Steve Torres asked from the doorway. Princess Lyra had been so absorbed in the files that she hadn't heard him approach. Your homeworld, she said, gesturing to the images on her screen. It's so violent. How did your people survive long enough to develop civilization? Steve entered the room and took a seat across from her. May I? He gestured to the datapad, and when she nodded, he scrolled through the files until he found what he was looking for. This might help explain it. The screen showed a timeline of human development, but it wasn't the steady progression that Princess Lyra was used to seeing in other species' histories. Instead, it looked like a series of disasters interrupted by brief periods of growth. Ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, plagues, wars, Steve said, pointing to different events on the timeline. Most species develop on stable worlds where they can build civilizations without constant threats. Humans never had that luxury. Princess Lyra studied the data. According to this, your species almost went extinct at least 6 different times. At least 6 times that we know of, Steve corrected. There might have been others that we lost records of. The thing is, each time we almost died out, survivors learned something new about how to avoid the same disaster happening again. But this shows that humans were fighting each other even while facing extinction, Princess Lyra said, pointing to records of wars that had happened during some of the worst disaster periods. That's probably the most important part, Steve said. Most species that face extinction either work together perfectly or they die out. Humans do something different. We fight each other, but we also learn from our enemies. Every war taught us new ways to survive, new technologies, new strategies. Princess Lyra opened another file, this one showing early human military history. What she saw made no sense, according to everything her empire had learned about warfare. These battles, she said, pointing to a series of conflicts. The losing sides often had better weapons and more soldiers. How did the winners succeed? By changing the rules, Steve explained. See this battle here? The smaller army was facing a much larger force with better armor and weapons. So instead of fighting the kind of battle their enemies expected, they waited for winter and attacked during a snowstorm when the heavy armor became a disadvantage. They used their own world's harsh environment as a weapon, Princess Lyra realized. Exactly. In this battle here, Steve pointed to another conflict. The outnumbered force pretended to retreat, led their enemies into a valley, then caused a landslide to trap them. It turned the terrain itself into their ally. Princess Lyra scrolled through more examples, each one showing humans finding ways to win against superior forces through creativity and adaptation. Your people have been doing this for thousands of years. It's how we survived, Steve said. When you can't win through superior force, you win by thinking differently than your opponent expects. A new voice came from the doorway. Commander. Torres, I hope you're not boring our guest with too much military history. Captain Miller entered the room, followed by Dr. Lisa Park. Actually, it's quite enlightening, Princess Lyra said. I'm beginning to understand why your negotiations with other species have been so successful. How so? Dr. Park asked, taking a seat next to Steve. You approach every situation as if you're the weaker party, Princess Lyra said. Even when you clearly have advantages, you act like you need to find creative solutions to survive. It makes other species underestimate you. Captain Miller smiled. That's an interesting observation. What made you think of it that way? Princess Lyra gestured to the datapad. Every conflict in your history shows the same pattern. Humans facing a stronger enemy, finding an unexpected solution, and winning through methods their opponents never considered. You're still doing it now, aren't you? What do you mean? Steve asked. My empire sent 15 heavy cruisers to intimidate one small exploration ship, Princess Lyra said. Any other species would have either surrendered immediately or tried to fight back with whatever weapons they had. Instead, you invited me aboard for negotiations and then demonstrated that you could disable my entire fleet without firing a shot. Dr. Park nodded thoughtfully. You're saying we treated the situation like we were the weaker party, even though we had the advantage? Exactly, Princess Lyra said. If you had wanted to destroy my ships, you could have done it easily. But instead, you found a way to neutralize the threat, while keeping everyone alive and opening the possibility for communication. Captain Miller leaned forward. Princess, what would your empire's standard response have been in a similar situation? Princess Lyra thought for a moment. If we had discovered a single alien ship in our territory, we would have demanded immediate surrender. If they refused, we would have destroyed them as an example to discourage other intrusions. And if they had superior technology? Steve asked. We would have retreated and returned with a larger fleet, Princess Lyra admitted. The idea of trying to negotiate from a position of weakness never occurs to us. Dr. Park pulled up another file on the datapad. This might interest you. It's a record of our first contact with the Corvin Coalition. Princess Lyra read through the report. The Corvins had approached humanity with a fleet of 30 ships, demanding that humans abandon their colonies in what the Corvins considered their territory. Instead of fighting or fleeing, the human negotiators had proposed a joint scientific expedition to study the natural resources of the disputed worlds. You convinced them to work with you instead of fighting you, Princess Lyra said. The Corvins are natural explorers, Captain Miller explained. Once they realized that humans were interested in understanding the universe rather than just conquering territory, they became some of our closest allies. The same approach worked with the Blaine Confederacy, Steve added. They were raiders. By necessity, not by choice. Their worlds were resource poor, so they had to take what they needed from others. We helped them establish legitimate trade relationships instead. Princess Lyra set down the datapad and looked at the three humans. Your species doesn't just adapt to survive physical threats. You adapt to survive social and political threats as well. It's all the same principle, Dr. Park said. When you're facing a problem that seems impossible to solve, you look for solutions that change the nature of the problem itself. But that requires you to understand your opponents better than they understand themselves, Princess Lyra pointed out.
Which
brings us back to Lieutenant Chen and her intelligence work, Captain Miller said. Understanding others is a survival skill for humans. We've been practicing it for thousands of years. Princess Lyra picked up the datapad again and scrolled through more files. Human history was filled with examples of smaller groups defeating larger ones, weaker nations outlasting stronger ones, and desperate situations being turned into opportunities for growth. There's something else, she said after a long pause. In all these historical records, humans never seem to give up completely. Even when facing total defeat, there's always someone still fighting, still looking for a way to survive. Extinction is permanent, Steve said simply. As long as even a few humans are still alive, there's hope that the species can recover. That's terrifying, Princess Lyra said quietly. Why? Captain Miller asked. Princess Lyra looked up from the datapad. Because it means that even if my empire could defeat humanity in open warfare, we could never be sure we had one completely. There would always be humans somewhere, adapting, learning, preparing for another chance. The room fell silent. Finally, Dr. Park spoke. Princess, is that what you think this is about? Warfare? Princess Lyra considered the question. I don't know anymore. When I arrived here, I thought I understood what humans were. I realize I don't understand anything about your species at all. Princess Lyra was reviewing human trade agreements in her guest quarters when the ship's emergency alert system activated. The calm voice of Lieutenant Amy Chen came over the communication system. All hands. This is the bridge. We have received a distress signal from Zephyrian Colony 7 in the Altair system. The colony is under attack by unknown vessels. Captain Miller has ordered a course change to provide assistance. Princess Lyra dropped her datapad and rushed toward the bridge. Her mind raced with questions. Zephyrian Colony 7 was one of their newest settlements, barely 2 years old, with only about 10,000 civilians. But more importantly, it was deep inside Zephyrian space. Far from any human territory, when she reached the bridge, Captain Miller was standing at the central command station, studying tactical displays with his senior officers. Captain, Princess Lyra said as she approached. Did I hear correctly? You're planning to assist one of our colonies? That's right, Jake said without looking away from his screens, according to the distress signal they're facing at least. 12 attack ships. The colony's defenses are failing. But why? Princess Lyra asked. We came here to demand your surrender. Our species are not allies. You have no obligation to help us. Jake finally turned to face her. Princess, when someone sends out a distress call, we respond. It doesn't matter what species they are, or what our political situation might be. General Voren, who had followed Princess Lyra to the bridge, stepped forward. Captain Miller, I must point out that this could be a trap. Colonial distress signals have been used before to lure enemy ships into ambushes. We considered that possibility, Commander Steve Torres said from his tactical station. But our sensors are picking up actual weapons fire around the colony. The attack appears to be genuine. Dr. Lisa Park looked up from her science console. Captain, I'm reading the energy signatures of the attacking vessels. They're not Zephyrian ships. Pirates? Jake asked. Most likely, Dr. Park confirmed. The weapon patterns match known raider groups that operate in this sector. Princess Lyra felt a cold fear settle in her stomach. Captain, if pirates have discovered Colony 7, they'll strip it of everything valuable and probably take the colonists as slaves. Our nearest military vessels are 3 days away. How long until we reach the colony? Jake asked his navigator. 18 hours at maximum speed, sir, came the reply. Too long, Princess Lyra said. The colony won't last 18 hours against 12 attack ships. Lieutenant Amy Chen turned from her station. Captain, I'm picking up something interesting. There are 3 other ships responding to the distress call. They're not Zephyrian vessels. Can you identify them? Jake asked. Yes, sir. 2 ships from the Corvin Coalition and 1 from the Blaine Confederacy. They're all heading toward Colony 7. Princess Lyra stared at the display showing the positions of the various ships. Non-Zephyrian vessels are responding to help our colony. The Corvins and the Blaine Confederacy have mutual aid agreements with humanity, Steve explained. When we respond to emergencies, they often assist us. But this isn't a human emergency, Princess Lyra protested. No, Jake agreed. But it's an emergency involving civilians under attack by raiders. That's enough. The next several hours passed in a blur of activity. Princess Lyra watched in amazement as the human crew coordinated with the responding Corvin and Blaine vessels. Sharing tactical information and planning a joint rescue operation, the 3 different species worked together as if they had been doing it for years, Princess Dr. Park called from her station. Would you like to contact Colony 7 directly? Can patch you through on a secure channel. Princess Lyra nodded, and moments later she was speaking with Governor Nell Vex, the administrator of Colony 7. Princess Lyra? Governor Vex sounded surprised and relieved. Thank the stars. Are you bringing a rescue fleet? I'm aboard a human vessel that responded to your distress call, Princess Lyra explained. We'll reach you in about 12 hours. Can you hold out that long? Barely, Governor Vex said. The raiders have destroyed most of our defense platforms. We've moved all civilians into the underground shelters, but our remaining shields won't last much longer. Governor, you'll have help from more than just us, Princess Lyra said. Ships from the Corvin Coalition and Blaine Confederacy are also responding. Aliens are coming to help us, Governor Vex asked in disbelief. Yes, Princess Lyra said. Looking around the human bridge where multiple species were working together to save Zephyrian lives, I'm learning that there are species in this galaxy who consider helping others to be more important than political boundaries. When they finally reached Colony 7, Princess Lyra witnessed something that completely changed her understanding of how civilized species could interact. The rescue operation was not a military assault but a coordinated effort that prioritized saving lives over destroying enemies. Pilot Tony Brooks took the UES Horizon directly into the battle zone, using the ship's advanced shields to protect wounded Zephyrian vessels while they retreated to safety. The Corvin ships used their superior speed to evacuate civilians from the most dangerous areas of the colony. The Blaine vessel, equipped with heavy weapons, engaged the raiders directly, but focused on disabling their ships rather than destroying them. Princess Tony called from the pilot station. We're getting reports of civilians trapped in the Northern Research Facility. The building is taking heavy fire, but our shuttles can't reach them through the raider attack pattern. I can get there, Princess Lyra said immediately. I know the layout of that facility. Absolutely not, General Voren protested. It's too dangerous. The general is right, Jake said. But we have another option. He turned to Tony. Can you get us close enough for a precision landing? In this battle? It'll be tight, but I can do it, Tony replied. Then let's go get those people, Jake said. Princess Lyra found herself in a human shuttle, flying through weapons fire toward the trapped Zephyrian civilians. Beside her sat Medique Katie Wells, who had volunteered for the rescue mission despite having no obligation to risk her life for alien colonists. Why are you doing this? Princess Lyra asked Katie as explosions rocked the shuttle around them. Because people need help, Katie said simply, checking her medical supplies. That's what we do. The rescue took 3 hours. Princess Lyra watched Katie work tirelessly to treat wounded Zephyrians, showing the same care and dedication she would give to human patients. When a young Zephyrian child was brought in with severe injuries, Katie spent an hour adapting human medical equipment to work with Zephyrian physiology. I've never seen this before, Princess Lyra said as Katie finished treating the child. Medical emergency? Katie asked, cleaning her instruments. No, Princess Lyra said. A species risking their lives to save complete strangers from a different civilization. Katie looked at her with confusion. What else would we do? Let them die? By the time the raiders had been driven off, and the last civilians evacuated to safety, Princess Lyra had seen human, Corvin, and Blaine personnel working side by side to save Zephyrian lives. No one had asked for payment or political concessions. No one had demanded gratitude or future favors. Governor Vex sends his thanks, Amy Chen reported from the communication station. Colony 7 is secure, and casualty reports are much lower than expected. Any word on the raiders? Jake asked. 6 vessels disabled and captured, 4 escaped, 2 destroyed when they refused to surrender, Steve reported. The prisoners are being transferred to Zephyrian custody. Princess Lyra stood on the bridge of the human ship, surrounded by the crew that had just risked everything to save her people. Around them, ships from 3 different species were coordinating relief efforts for a colony that belonged to none of them, Captain Miller, she said quietly. I need to ask you something. Of course, Princess. When my empire demanded your surrender, you could have responded with force. When we threatened you, you could have destroyed our ships. When we showed weakness, you could have taken advantage. Instead, you chose to protect people who have never done anything for humanity. She paused, trying to find the right words. Why? Jake considered her question for a long moment. Princess, in our experience, the galaxy becomes a better place. When species choose to protect each other instead of conquering each other, we've found that helping others usually creates more opportunities than taking from them does. Princess Lyra looked out at the rescued colony, at the ships from multiple species working together. At the crew around her who had acted without hesitation to save alien lives. I think I'm beginning to understand something important about strength. She said, What's that? Jake asked. Real strength isn't the power to destroy your enemies, Princess Lyra said. It's the courage to protect people who can't protect themselves. The throne room of the Zephyrian Empire fell silent as Princess Lyra finished her report. Emperor Thane Veltar sat on his crystal throne, his pale blue features showing the confusion and disbelief that filled the massive chamber around them. The High Council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Let me understand this correctly, Emperor Thane said slowly. You went to demand the surrender of a primitive species, and instead you are recommending that we form a mutual defense alliance with them. Yes, Father, Princess Lyra replied, standing straight despite the weight of dozens of stares from the most powerful beings in the Empire. That is exactly what I am recommending. Chancellor Prime Kex Maureen rose from his seat. Princess, with respect, this suggestion is unprecedented. The Zephyrian Empire has never formed an alliance with any species. We conquer or we avoid. Those are our only 2 options. Those were our only 2 options, Princess Lyra corrected. But humanity has shown us that there is a third choice. And what choice is that? Asked General Supreme Vex Thane, the Emperor's chief military advisor. Partnership, Princess Lyra said. Working together instead of working against each other. The council chamber erupted in voices as the assembled leaders began talking over each other. Princess Lyra heard fragments of their conversations. Words like weakness, an impossible and dangerous precedent, filled the air. Emperor Thane raised his hand, and the chamber fell silent again. Daughter, I have read your full report. According to your observations, this human species has defeated 3 separate military coalitions, possesses technology we cannot understand, and has built an alliance network spanning dozens of worlds. That is correct, Father. And why would they want an alliance with us? The Emperor asked. If they are as powerful as you claim, what could they possibly gain from working with our empire? Princess Lyra had been expecting this question. It was the same thing she had wondered during her time aboard the human ship. Father, may I tell you about something I witnessed while I was with them? The Emperor nodded. The humans received a distress call from one of our colonies, Princess Lyra began. Colony 7 was under attack by raiders. Our nearest military ships were 3 days away, but the human vessel immediately changed course to provide assistance. They helped defend a Zephyrian colony? Chancellor Prime Morin asked in surprise. Not just defended, Princess Lyra continued. They coordinated a rescue operation with ships from 2 other species, risked their lives to evacuate our civilians, and treated our wounded with the same care they would show their own people. Why would they do this? General Supreme Thane asked. Because that is what they do, Princess Lyra said. They don't help others because they expect something in return. They help because they believe the galaxy becomes safer when species work together, instead of fighting each other. Emperor Thane leaned forward on his throne. You spent a week with these humans. What did you learn about their true intentions? Princess Lyra thought about everything she had seen aboard the UES Horizon. The casual display of overwhelming intelligence capabilities, the integration of technology from multiple species, crew working together to save alien lives without hesitation. Father, I learned that we have been thinking about power in the wrong way, she said. We believe that strength comes from forcing others to obey us. Humans have discovered that true strength comes from inspiring others to work with you willingly. Explain, the Emperor commanded. The Corvin Coalition has twice as many ships as the human fleet, Princess Lyra said.
We can while we're here, while we're gonna what wait well I wait well we would when we
With humanity because humans helped them solve problems instead of creating new ones. The Blaine Confederacy was a group of raiders who attacked human colonies. But instead of destroying them, humans helped them establish legitimate trade relationships. Saying they turned enemies into allies, Chancellor Prime Morin observed. I'm saying they never saw them as enemies in the first place, Princess Lyra corrected. They saw them as species with problems that could be solved through cooperation. General Supreme Thane stood up. Princess, this all sounds very idealistic. But what about military realities? If we form an alliance with humanity, what happens when our enemies attack us? Princess Lyra smiled. General, I watched a single human ship disable 15 of our heavy cruisers without firing a shot. Did it using technology they developed in 2 weeks after studying our shield frequencies? If our enemies attack us while we are allied with humanity, I suspect they will discover that they have made a serious mistake. The chamber fell quiet again. Princess Lyra could see the council members processing what she had told them. Finally, Emperor Thane spoke. Lyra, you have always been the most cautious of my children. You have never recommended anything that would put our empire at risk. But what you are suggesting now would change everything about how we interact with other species. Yes, Father, it would, Princess Lyra agreed. I believe that change is necessary for our survival. Our survival, Chancellor Prime Morin asked. The Zephyrian Empire is one of the most powerful forces in this galaxy. How could our survival be in question? Princess Lyra looked around the chamber at the leaders of her empire. Because we have built our power on the assumption that we are stronger than everyone we encounter. But humanity has shown me that there are species out there who are not only stronger than us, but who think in ways we never considered possible. You believe humans could destroy our empire if they chose to? Emperor Thane asked quietly. Father, I believe humans could have destroyed our empire before we ever knew they existed, Princess Lyra said. They had been watching us for months, learning our weaknesses, understanding our technology. If they had wanted to attack us, we would never have seen it coming. But they chose not to attack, General Supreme Thane observed. They chose to invite me aboard their ship for negotiations instead, Princess Lyra confirmed. They chose to demonstrate their capabilities without causing permanent damage. They chose to show me their history and their values. And when our people were in danger, they chose to risk their lives to save us. Emperor Thane was quiet for several long minutes. Finally, he asked, Daughter, if we form this alliance, what do you believe will happen to our empire? Princess Lyra had thought about this question many times during her journey home. Father, I believe we will become something we have never been before. Instead of an empire that rules through fear, we could become an empire that leads through example. Instead of conquering worlds, we could help them solve their problems. Instead of making enemies, we could make allies. You believe this? Will make us stronger? The Emperor asked. Father, humans have shown me that the strongest empires are not the ones with the biggest fleets or the most territory, Princess Lyra said. The strongest empires are the ones that other species choose to work with rather than being forced to submit to. Emperor Thane stood up from his throne. Council members, I want you to review Princess Lyra's full report. We will reconvene tomorrow to vote on her recommendation. As the council members began filing out of the chamber, Emperor Thane gestured for Princess Lyra to remain behind. When they were alone, he looked at his daughter with an expression she had never seen before. Lyra, he said quietly, in all my years as emperor, I have made decisions based on strength, fear, and control. You are asking me to make a decision based on trust, cooperation, and hope. Yes, Father, I am. If I agree to this alliance, and we are wrong about human intentions, it could mean the end of our empire. Princess Lyra nodded. But if we refuse this opportunity and continue on our current path, I believe we will eventually encounter a species that will not offer us the choice between cooperation and conquest. And when that happens, we may discover that the empire we built through fear was never as strong as we thought it was. Emperor Thane walked to the great window that looked out over the capital city of the Zephyrian Empire. What did Captain Miller say when you told him you would recommend this alliance? To me? He said that he looked forward to learning what our two species could accomplish together, Princess Lyra replied. And then he invited our entire diplomatic team to visit human colonies so they could see how multi-species cooperation works in practice. The Emperor turned back to face his daughter. Lyra, tomorrow when the council votes, I want you to be the one to present the final argument for this alliance. What should I tell them, Father? Emperor Thane looked out the window again, at the empire he had spent his life building through conquest and intimidation. Tell them that sometimes the greatest act of strength is admitting that you have something to learn from others. The next day, the High Council voted unanimously to approve the first alliance in Zephyrian history. And as Princess Lyra signed the agreement, alongside Captain Jake Miller 6 months later, she realized that her response to encountering humanity had not just changed her empire's future. It had changed her understanding of what civilization could become when species chose to build together instead of tear each other down.